Hello there, and welcome back to these sessions on Discerning the Priesthood Explained. Okay, in this session, we're going to walk through just an overview, a 30,000-foot view of what it looks like to discern a call to the priesthood. I know that word call happens quite a bit. You may have heard it a lot. You hear a priest say, I heard the call, or I discerned a call. What does that mean? Did that come like through the phone? Did like an owl swoop down and deliver a letter, says time to go to the seminary now? Like how does someone discover that they are in fact called by God to be a priest? In this session, we're going to look at an overview, 30,000-foot view, and then in the later sessions, we're going to dive into the individual pieces. But I just want to get the confines clear. There is a clear beginning, there is a clear end to this vague and foggy thing we sometimes, or that we call the discernment process. And so let's dive in now and see what that looks like from beginning to end. It often starts with a guy who is just a practicing Catholic. Maybe he's 16 years old and up and just loves his Catholic faith. He goes to Mass on Sunday. He's maybe involved with a youth group. Maybe he's involved with Catholic young adult type things in his early 20s or even 30s. And just adoration, maybe he's a lead altar server. Just his faith is a part of his life, right? He loves it. He reads a lot about it. He watches videos. He listens to podcasts. His Catholic faith is a very real part of his life. That's step one, is that they are a practicing Catholic. If they are not going to Mass every Sunday, I can pretty much promise you they are not thinking about being a priest. And so step number one is they are just a believer in God. They are a follower of Jesus, and they love their Catholic faith. In that context, something magical kind of happens at some point, right? They just become open to the idea of being a priest. And it's not yet an attraction at this point. It's not a desire to be a priest at this point. It's just more of a curiosity of like, what would it be like? Maybe they're at Mass, for example. They see the priest elevate the Eucharist in the air, and people are watching, and they just catch themselves going like, gosh, like is God calling me to do that with my life? Like, sheesh, that's a big thing. And so it's just a curiosity and openness. They're not telling anybody about it at this point. It's just something that they catch themselves thinking about from time to time. After that, they become what we jokingly call a cyber discerner. That is, they typically go online and they just research vocations. They are like, what is a priesthood do? Why celibacy? Why do they wear black all the time? What's the seminary? What is discernment? And they're just learning, they're gathering data, they're researching vocations, wondering what it is like. After they research vocations, almost always, there's a priest in the picture. Maybe it's their pastor or an associate pastor. Maybe it's the priest at their college campus or someone a family friend that's a priest. Almost always, though, there is a priest that has made an impact on his life. And he sees him and he knows him. He sees the joy that is in his heart about this way of life. And that is very helpful for their discernment. They just kind of go, wow, God calls flesh and blood human beings, people from parishes, people from families, people who have hobbies and play instruments and like the theater and like to cook and don't like cauliflower and, are interested in the Civil War. And, priests are people, right? They're very different backgrounds and temperaments. And God calls all kinds to this way of life. It is helpful for the discerner to see and meet a priest and go, okay, like he could be calling me. Like I'm a real human being. I have troubles and challenges. Like, man, maybe God is actually calling me to be a priest. Meeting a priest, getting to know him, seeing the humanity of it, seeing the joy of it, that seems to be really helpful for his discernment. Almost always, there's a priest in the picture in his life that has invested in him and given time and taken time with him in the confessional, for example, that's really helped out his discernment of this way of life. If after all that things keep going, at some point he realizes this creature exists called the vocation director. Every diocese has one. It is someone who is set apart for the sole reason of accompanying young men in this process. Maybe he's also in a parish, maybe he's not in a parish, but this is what he does. He gets to know the guys, he hears their story, He invites them to discernment events. He makes recommendations. He gives encouragement. He prays for them regularly. The vocation director is really there to accompany them through this discernment process, whether the guy is called to be a priest or not. That's what this priest is here to help with. Typically, after that, they start jumping into discernment opportunities. Maybe the vocation director, for example, invites them into a discernment group, or they go on a seminary visit. They meet other discerners. They learn more specifically, not just like what it's like to be Catholic or what the church teaches about this, but priesthood-specific type things, discernment-specific type things. And if they like those types of things, things are opening up in their life, right? They're opening up. They're becoming more interested in this, in the priesthood and in discerning it as well. If those discernment opportunities go well for him, then he probably starts to think to himself, gosh, maybe I should become a seminarian and dive in, make the plunge and see if this is for me or it's not for me. You don't just sign up on Friday and jump into the seminary on Saturday. There's an application process that usually for most dioceses takes at least a couple months. And here you're inviting the church into your conversation of who you are, where you are, what you're like, and they, through the application process, they're going to help you discern should I become a priest or not, but really, is this a good time for me to go to the seminary and to spend some time there and dive in? The application process is a part of the discernment process. We'll talk much more about that in future sessions. If the application process goes well, the bishop of the diocese, the successor of the apostles, will formally accept you into their seminary formation program. At that point, the guy goes to the seminary. He moves in. And this begins what we call formal discernment. This is like priest school, right? Again, we'll talk more about these in detail later on. But for now, just know that when they move into the seminary, they're surrounded by guys around their age who are thinking about the same thing. They're pretty much all unsure if they're called to be priests or not, but they are there because they love God, they love the church, they're feeling kind of a tug towards this mission, and they're there to discern that. And so they're going to live with all these other guys who are going to be friends with, in this process. They're going to be studying the catechism. They're going to be studying the Bible. There's going to be daily mass, liturgy of the hours every day. They're going to have spiritual direction every other week. There's going to be ministry opportunities every week that they're going to be diving into. They're going to be living with other priests. They're like swimming in it at this point, right? They are really diving in and seeing, is this way of life for me? That first section of seminary is what they're studying academically also is a lot of philosophy. If that goes well, 3 years or so typically, maybe 4 depending on how much high school education they have or college education they have, they will move to another seminary, or they may stay put at the same seminary to begin studying theology. This next step is a 4-year process, minimum of 4 years, where again, the training, the formation is happening, spiritual direction, daily mass, all that, developing prayer life, shedding sins one by one, getting healing, even counseling if they need it for past things. They're developing and they're healing and they're being formed in the process. And now things are getting more intense regarding formation. Now they're learning not just about the Eucharist, but now they're learning how to say Mass, how to preach, how to do a funeral. In the second part of seminary, when they are studying theology, there are a lot of practicums for how to do a lot of the things how to do everything that the priest is supposed to do. After all that, at least 7 years of seminary formation, of spiritual direction, counseling, your brother seminarians, living with other priests, diving into parishes, diving into ministry, growing in your faith, right? After all that, if you and the church are both yeses, then at that point, the bishop calls you to be a priest and they are ordained. Now, if you find yourself kneeling and the bishop's hands land on your head, at that point, the discernment process is over, right? You're no longer wondering, am I called to be a priest or not? Like, yes, you are a priest now. Now it's time to be an awesome kick-butt priest for the kingdom of God and to bring a lot of souls to heaven with you. So that is a snapshot of the discernment process. I know looking out it can be vague, it can be foggy. What in the world? Where do I start? Does it ever stop? Yes, that is what 99% of the priests will go through and have gone through and will go through as they discern this way of life. It does have a stopping point, and please know, as you're starting out, the church is with you every step of the way. Every step the church is here to accompany you, to help you decide, help you discern, is God calling me to this way of life? Guys discern out all the time. That's normal and part of it. We'll talk more about that in a future session. But for now, I just wanted to give a kind of a snapshot and an overview of what the discernment process looks like, from that involved with being a Catholic to being open, curious, interested, until eventually through that seminary time, they're going to eventually desire to be a priest. And at that point, we know it's for them. The church has spoken, and off they run as a priest, making it happen for the kingdom of God. This is an overview of the discernment process. In the next session, we're going to talk about common challenges. See you then.